All right, just want to pass along some information in case anybody want to make their own joystick. I've been wanting to do this for a while. This is going to be just a brief video, just some do's and don'ts. This wasn't made to be ultra pretty. This is real wood, pretty thick, I should add. I wanted it to be sturdy, so it wouldn't move around a lot. Just wide enough that I could probably keep it in my lap, or even maybe wedge it between my legs if I'm sitting on the couch and kind of keep it sturdy. But I bought this kit a while back. I've probably had this for over a year now. It's just a cheap, you can see by the rating, it's just probably from China. But it came with 10 buttons and the joystick. I've got 6 buttons up here. I've got these 2 are actually smaller, and then I'll put one on each side. Basically I just bought some wood from the store. This may have been like a $10 or $15 piece of wood that I cut down to make this box. As you can see, it's, like I said, it's not made to be pretty. I might have lightly sanded it, but I'm not even going to try to stain this. This was really just for practice because it was cheap enough. But just a couple things I wanted to pass along in case you were going to make a box. Just some things I learned about making this one here is I don't have a drill press, so I basically bought some paddle bits from Harbor Freight. They were really cheap. I think you can buy the whole set up to like almost like 1 3/4 inches for like under 10 bucks. If you got a drill press, obviously that's the best way to go. But if I zoom in here, you'll see like this one here. When I initially started drilling these holes, I had used too small of a bit, and the button wouldn't fit in the hole. So the one thing you got to watch out if you're like me and you're using a drill, just a hand drill and a paddle bit, is if you do something like this, especially on wood, and you drill it too small, if you put the next size in and you don't have this thing cinched down really good and you don't hold that drill bit just right, it gets away from you. So that's where I got eat up a little bit right there. Best thing to do is to have something cheap, like maybe you might have some press board or something in your garage, or something just inexpensive that you can practice on, and then try drilling that hole first and then test fitting the buttons and then seeing if they fit then. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend, is drilling test holes before you drill into your permanent piece of wood here. Like I said, this was just for practice for me, so that's no big deal. Something about this kit, it works good. I've tested it, it works great, but these don't have the screw-on bottoms, and hopefully this is light enough that you can see. These just press in. They actually have, matter of fact, I'll press one out so I can show you, because these aren't in there super tight, is they just have tabs that are supposed to kind of help when you push it in to wedge it in. But obviously you can see, as long as I'm pushing down on the top, these are fine. They're not going through or anything. But it doesn't take much to push them out. And they do make some that have like a screw-on bottom to keep the button in place so they don't go anywhere. That's probably what I'll go to next. Also, I want some lit up buttons, and these don't light up obviously, so I'm going to go ahead and go for that route. But like I said, this kit was cheap, and the part of it for me was just to practice. So basically, this bottom of the joystick pad just screws into the bottom here, and then the ball here screws on. You just push it through the bottom, and then this little cap here covers up your hole. Obviously, the hole's pretty big, but the cap covers it well, and then you just screw the ball on, and then that stays in place, no problem. And then the piece that everything connects to is right here, and from the bottom, if I can get this to stay here, basically like this one here is one, and then they go 2, 3, 4 all the way across. So for me, I think I went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 and 10. And you can see plenty of videos online about how to like set up your Pi. My Raspberry Pi is in here in the bottom, and there's the plug. The cord for the controller here is long enough that I'll probably end up keeping the Raspberry Pi outside the box because I did have the little temperature gauge pop up quite frequently when I was testing the games. And so I think by getting this out of this box, there's not a whole lot of ventilation other than the hole I put in the back. So I can run the plug out. I do have a hole right there, and I put a couple hinges here just to help keep the top on. But basically it's pretty simple once you hook all those up, and then the main controller board connects right there, and that connects to the joystick itself. And what I did was I actually hooked this up to my laptop, and then your laptop will recognize it as a generic joystick, and then you can actually go in and calibrate it. Because the first thing I did was I had this mounted in like one turn this way, so whenever I would push up, it was actually going like left, so I had to make sure to turn it underneath here and then remount it. And then once I calibrated it, everything was up and down was down. So just something else to keep in mind. But you know, I'll probably just keep this intact here, you know, and use it. You'll have to learn a little bit about RetroArch when you go in. That's another video you can look up online. So for instance, when I want to back out of a game, I hold this button and this button simultaneously, and it'll back me out of a game. You have to make sure you have those hotkeys set, so if you go into a game, you have a way to get out. So and then for most of the games, it's these two buttons here. I did have some games where I was actually utilizing this button as well, but for me, there's some folks that have like 8 of these buttons out here. Most of the games I enjoy, because I'm in my 40s, didn't require but maybe 2 buttons, sometimes maybe more, but most of the games I enjoyed growing up just had a couple buttons. So you know, for the guys that play those fighting games that have like 8 buttons up here, that, you know, I didn't really get into those. But you could certainly, the 2 on the sides you could put up here if you wanted to play a lot of those games, and you know, makes it a little easier. I put the buttons on the side here in case I ever maybe played a pinball game that I could utilize kind of like a pinball machine that way. So, but that's about it. I just want to kind of put on here that I thought this was going to take a while. I actually did this one evening in a few hours. Didn't really run into any hiccups. Like I said, drilling the holes, you know, I did kind of butcher a little bit, like the same here. So just if you're doing this one's even worse. You can see how bad that one was. I actually didn't have paddle bits this small, so I actually went back to the Harbor Freight and got the smaller bits and kind of finished these off. But I tried using a drill bit and just going all the way around, and that didn't really work out too well. So I do recommend buying a full gamut of paddle bits and then doing testing on each of those as you do them. So but that, and the only other hiccup I had was that I hooked this up. You can actually pull this off and reverse it and put it on, and that was causing my calibration to not really go right. So once I figured that out, I spun this around and hooked it up, and everything started working correctly. So like I said, that's about it. I just wanted to pass that along. I'm gonna have some fun with this with some of the games. One of the first games I played was track and field, where you have to tap the buttons, and it worked out great. Felt just like it did back in 1986 or whatever when it came out. So if you have any questions, just post them down below, and I'll be glad to answer them. But if you're looking to make a little RetroPie joystick, homemade joystick, just pick you up a kit. Like I said, this one was pretty cheap, and then the wood, of course, you know, you can buy a small piece of wood at Lowe's or Home Depot and cut it to whatever size you want. I wanted to make sure mine was big enough that I could put the pie inside, and you know, make sure it was sturdy enough that it wasn't, you know, flopping all over the place. Some guys I see make them a lot shallower, so maybe like half of the depth, and I probably could have done that with this one, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't go too small. So that's about it. If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to comment. Thanks.